Hey, what's up, everyone? Welcome back to the CM Mentors podcast. My name is Matt Graves. My co-host each week's Kyle Grandell. What is up, Kyle?
Well, Matt, doing good. I cannot believe it's August, by the way. This year's flying by. I don't know about you, but
I get these like 3-month planners, and I just like burned through the last 3 month one. I'm starting a brand new one. I was like, what happened to this thing? Like the summer flew by.
no, it is flying by, and we got another month left of it, I think, roughly. But
Yeah, we were talking about, doing all this with all these summer plans for our kids, doing all these trips and stuff like, all the stuff we wanted to do. I'm always like, we need to finish doing all this stuff. So, what do you mean? It's like, well, school starts in like a week and a half. I was like, oh, time's flying, man.
I didn't even have a list this year. So, anyways,
we were more prepared this year than we have been in the past. So.
Sweet. All right. Well, everybody, thanks for listening again. We have an awesome guest this week. We have Drew Hanish with Pravo Construction. He's the CEO. They specialize in commercial construction, historical renovation, actually pretty damn cool. Fellow University of Minnesota graduate, Skyuma. He's got a BA in construction management, and he's also a Gopher baseball alumni. So before we bring Drew on, we'll do a quick show sponsor. This week, we actually have Dell Management. Dell Management specializes in construction management services, mainly owners rep roles for Fortune 500 manufacturers. And with decades of experience, over $1.4 billion in projects, they've seen the toll that unsafe, overrun, and late projects can take on clients' businesses and their people. Customers experience the Dell Management way, not from our success with high profile and fast paced projects, but also critical systems shutdowns and large scale projects all over the country. So with that being said, together, we're building the future through innovation. And Matt, back to you.
I gotta say, you crushed that show sponsor. You came prepared. My all CMO ones were not. When you try to make it up on the fly.
Yeah. Well, I'm really proud to say I practiced it exactly 0 times. So.
Well, anyways, I think you killed it, man. I wouldn't practice anymore.
Appreciate it.
Anyway, let's bring Drew on.
All right.
What's up, Drew?
Hey, welcome.
Hey guys, what's happening? How are y'all?
Doing great, man. Great to have you.
Hey,
I gotta say, whenever we've had a lot of Texas guests on this season, and I was like, oh, we finally got somebody from Minnesota for Kyle. And then I looked and like, oh, but he's from Austin too.
Yeah, I have something in common with both of you guys. So Matt, I'm down here in Texas, native Texan, and was fortunate enough to become a Gopher. So,
well, that's a good lead in. How did that happen?
Yeah. I had an opportunity to go play baseball there at the University of Minnesota. And so I'm originally from about a small town about an hour north of Dallas, and had a great opportunity to go up there. And I loved my experience up there. I still travel up there once or twice a year to go see a bunch of old friends, and really love the city up there. And happy to go back whenever we can. But I'm a big fan of our Gophers, and Olympic season, we got a bunch of Olympians in the competing as well. So not only do we put out just an incredible talent in construction, we put out some Olympians too.
Awesome, I sure like that.
An hour north of Dallas. It's like Oklahoma. It was like Denison or something?
Melissa.
Okay.
It was a really small town growing up, and it's expanded and grown quite a bit. So I actually had to go into McKinney schools growing up. And so I used to tell people I was from McKinney, because nobody knew where Melissa was, but now it's grown enough to where I can tell people I'm from Melissa. So
no, it's that whole area is blowing up, man. It's crazy.
Yeah, it was pretty crazy growing up there.
We just spent a week in Louisville area, and it was that whole North Dallas area is just wild.
Yep.
So what got you into construction management, kind of in construction in general?
Yeah, I like I said, University of Minnesota has a phenomenal construction management degree, and had an opportunity to kind of join some of my classmates and stuff that were pursuing that career. And it was a really good fit for me. Had an opportunity right out of college to move down to Austin to work for a large general contractor that's headquartered out of the Bay Area, doing a lot of, I started doing some high-tech manufacturing. They had a really big pipeline with a lot of the tech companies back from the Bay Area. So started doing a lot of Apple, Google, Dell work, that type of work here, and ended up breaking off in 2015 and starting Pravo Construction in 2016.
Very cool. 16 is the same year as my business too. Wow. What month, just out of curiosity?
March. March
You got me beat. Okay. December for me. So, all right.
Yeah. Well, I mean, it's been a crazy ride, right? To start a company in 2016, especially for us, we were a corporate interior general contractor. That for us was a pretty early entry into the market, pretty easy entry into the market. We were doing a lot of Class A corporate office for the first couple of years. 2020, we obviously saw a pretty big shift in that type of work. And so, we kind of took things that we were good at of that corporate office and were able to shift them into other marketplaces.
Very cool.
Yeah.
I lived in Austin up until 2018. We moved down to the Houston area, and those corporate offices were blowing and going in that time period.
Yeah. And they still are, right? Like, we're still seeing projects that were started before kind of interest rates really increase. Like a lot of those projects are continuing on. And so we still have quite a bit of office space that's going to come online here in the next couple of years. We'll see a gap probably in available corporate office if those get taken up over the next 4 years, maybe somewhere between that 4 to 6 year gap from now.
So you guys are specializing in historical renovations. Do y'all do new tenant finish outs too, or mostly?
We do. We do. Yeah. Over the past couple of years, I would say, historical, I would really define it more as kind of reuse in multiple different ways. A lot of it we end up doing is historical. But, I would really define that more as something that has really challenging existing conditions, whether it's historical or not, So it's an adaptive reuse of an old warehouse to a creative office space. It's a historical building to a high occupancy first floor, second and third floor office. Some of them have been, in hospitality, where we've taken an old historical building in the central business district and transitioned that into a hospitality location. So, as I was kind of talking about earlier, a lot of our corporate office that got us that early entry into the market, where we started to be able to dabble in some other areas, that was one thing that we really looked up, and we had truly built some expertise in that area to be able to service that area. And a lot of architects and end users have reached out to us over the past 3 to 5 years in that type of work. And, for us internally, it's something that it's meaningful work. Sometimes you get those corporate office projects, and a lot of times it's like the next and the next and the next project, right? Especially for the project teams. Mm-hmm. So those, whether it's the adaptive reuse or historical, to allow our teams, project managers and superintendents, to really kind of create some passion around the type of project that they're working on, that they're really unique and really challenging. We kind of saw that from our teams. We were like, let's do more of that, right? Something that's exciting us to wake up in the morning and do really good work and provide a really good product.
Very cool.
When you're talking historical, are we talking just older buildings? Are we talking actual certified historical buildings through the Texas Historical Commission?
Yeah, we do quite a bit that's actually certified historical buildings. And so a lot of our projects are going through the historical renovation committee here in Austin. And so, we're working to make sure that we're preserving the exterior facades. We're not able to kind of go back with anything new or modern on a lot of those buildings. So we're bringing those back to, a lot of times they're looking at old photos, right? We're pulling old photos and looking at those with the designer, with the architect, to make sure that whatever time period kind of the historical commission wants to see, that we're bringing those back to those historical time periods.
I don't think people who do that work or have done that work don't understand the complexities that really go into that, and how much limitation there is behind what you can do.
Yeah. Yeah, for sure. When something as small as like when you're looking at different types of stones on the exterior of the building, right? A lot of those stones may not exist anymore, right? So how are we finding materials and those types of things to be able to match, and things that the historical commission are going to be accepting of?
I've been working on a historical courthouse
Yeah.
on the south side of Houston, and it was built in the 40s. And even trying to find it's all stone facade, right? And even trying to find matching, because a lot of the grouts cracked and fell out. Trying to you understand, or you understand, but a lot of people probably don't understand like the pain it's been to find a grout that's acceptable, just a grout.
Yeah.
And not only does it have to match in color and all smell and everything else, right? But it's got to match in like the hardness and everything.
And for sure,
it's wild.
Yeah, I think there's definitely the intricacies of the construction piece, but I think when you look at it from a real estate move and kind of things that we've seen shifts in the market on, we've seen a lot of changes to the usages of those types of buildings, right? That make it advantageous for real estate companies to go and pursue those. And you're seeing that, successfully done in certain case studies in major cities. We're starting to see it in a lot of our surrounding suburbs as, those continue to grow. I think one of the things that's unique here in Austin is like, we do this type of work here in Austin. There's not a ton of that type of product, right? There is kind of older, surrounding warehouse type buildings and those over on the east side. But other major markets have done it very, very successfully. We talk about Minneapolis, you look at kind of the Mill City district, the warehouse district, northwest of the Target Center there, and what they've done, in redeveloping that entire area. That's a bustling area of, our generation, millennial generation, and Gen Z for everything, housing, there's entertainment, there's hospitality, there's arts, the opportunities for using a lot of that older product, and Minneapolis specifically is unique for that, right along the Mississippi River, right? There's a ton of really old industry that used a lot of that warehouse district right there on the Mississippi that, has since moved out. So I continue to see a bigger trend going in there. It's one area that people have obviously looked at. We're looking at a housing crisis, right? Like, how are we converting? And the big question is like, how are we converting corporate office into multifamily? Anybody in our industry knows that gets thrown around all the time. And if you're in our industry, you know how challenging that is, right? And so, the opportunities are there, but they're with a lot of older depressed assets. At least we're going to create a bunch of case studies in our industry to understand how we're doing that. And I think a lot of that is being done. You're seeing that a lot in that warehouse district area in Minneapolis. And, so those are some of the things that we'd like to pursue and like to, continue to mature in that space and continue to grow and see if we can't stick our nose in some of those trends. But I see it happening with more of the depressed assets than like, hey, there was this Class B office space, let's turn it into multifamily. Those aren't necessarily feasible if you're well versed in construction and architecture.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, well, and I mean, it's a super cool area to work in, Drew. It's actually kind of fascinating. I think I've never even thought about it, but obviously I know the work takes place. Somebody's got to do it. But what got you into wanting to own your own company in the first place? It's a question I love to ask business owners when we get them on here.
Yeah, I feel like I come from a long line of that entrepreneurial spirit in my family. Brothers, my dad, my uncles, my grandfather, and so, I think I always had an entrepreneurial spirit. I think taking that leap, I look back now, there's certainly a level of ignorance going into it, the whole, what I would know, what I know now, but for me, it was a really good point in my life to go and do that and go and pursue that. It wasn't for me, at a young age, it wasn't a big risk, right? I would say the risk was I didn't take a salary for a year and a half until we started hiring people and figured out that I was required to take a salary, right? Like, those were challenging times. But again, like if I'm evaluating the risk profile of going to do that, and Kyle, I'm sure you can speak towards as well. It's like it was the right time for me. I thought I could take a handful of clients and built a good reputation in the market to be able to take those and get something going. So yeah, I look back, at the later years of the company, and I think that it's the whole thing where you look at the business now, like it's certainly, we're still a baby. We're still a very young growing company. And ours isn't not one of those success overnight stories, right? Like the first 3 years, we did see a really steady increase in revenue over the first couple of years. COVID happened, the market shifted. We knew we had, some pretty significant existential threats as a 3-year-old, 4-year-old company when COVID happened. One of the first things we did is we looked and we said, hey, who's our repeat? Who's our loyal customers? 4-year-old company, that's hard to say, right? And those are the companies that are going to take you through, economic downturns and shifts. We didn't have those, right? So before COVID, we pulled a stat and we had about 20% of our work was repeat. And so we knew that we needed to change that. We got down to a Navy SEAL team of really good teams that were good at repeat clients. And we looked in 2022. So in just a 2-3 year period in 2022, we had close to 80% repeat clients. And so we really solidified that. We matured a lot. We learned a lot from going through those. I think that one thing that we learned was in those early years, we were trying to kind of mimic what I knew from the industry, right? The large companies who had all the different divisions. We do corporate office. We do this really well. We do multifamily. And having all those different divisions, like that wasn't us, right? We didn't fit that. We wanted to kind of pursue work that we know that we liked, work that we know that we do well, and carve out different niches and different places for us in the market. The other thing on that is the first couple of years, we got a lot of clients because we were a young, exciting company. We hired a lot of people because we were that young, exciting company. During that kind of COVID time when we were evaluating the company, we really looked at like, we need to be builders first and foremost. We need to be incredibly passionate about building. That's what we're here to do. We're not here to be the, cool young company. And so we've hired and rehired and regrown based on kind of those things. And so, we have a collection of people that are incredibly nerdy about building. We just are. And so when we're hiring people now, we're going through that process of talking with them and being like, is this something that you want? Because you're going to get thrown into a pool of people who are incredibly nerdy about building. And they're excited to wake up and solve problems in construction because they love construction, right? And so, that was another kind of big shift for us that we've made. And I think we've built an incredible team now that fits that mold. So.
Well, and I really respect that, and especially I can relate to it because at least the last part, especially with having the excitement about the industry and something actually we started doing too. We're currently interviewing for another person to join our team, and we started asking them during the interview, "What excites you about the role?" And it's not even so much that there's a right answer, but their answer just tells us, okay, how are they going to fit in with the team? The rest of the people they're going to be working with in the industry. When you get out to the sites, what's the experience going to be like for them, for the customers, for the other workers? It's such an important thing to have that excitement and to really want to be there.
Yeah, absolutely.
I think that excitement shines through to your final product, right? Into the project owner's experience. I mean, you said you went from 20% to 80% retention or repeat clients. And so just having that team, and I mean, I've said this 100 times, but quote, anybody can build a construction project, but it's kind of on the owner's perspective, they're going to get their building one way or another. It's the process to get there, right? Was it kicking and screamings and change orders and nickeling and diming and the whole 9 yards, or was it an enjoyable process? And if it's an enjoyable process and they got a good quality product and they liked the team, well, then that's how your biz dev becomes super easy, because they're just going to call you back for the next one. So
yeah, I think one thing that you touched on there is like, it's really, really challenging as a construction company to have differentiators, right? Mm-hmm. Once you've built kind of expertise and you've built out the systems and processes, yep, we have construction management software. Yep, we have a really well-run OAC meeting on a weekly basis. Yes, we communicate well with the architect. Like, then
so does everybody else,
right? So does everybody. We do great pre-con. Everybody does great pre-con, right? Like, what are the real differentiators? How are you understanding your customer, and how are you really truly impacting kind of their bottom line from and creating differentiators, right? Like, something as simple in like the hospitality world. That grand opening date is incredibly important, right? Sticking that grand opening date, making sure they're able to get in and do their training and stuff like that. So, those are the things as a construction company that we're trying to like take that next step. Again, we're just a baby, right? We're trying to figure these things out. We're trying to learn, but like, what are the differentiators outside of, yes, we check the box on quality, on budget, on schedule, on the ability to be able to communicate and those things, but like, what's the next step, right? How can we really help our customers understand their, where we understand their business and how it relates to the construction project that they're taking on.
I think the way you've done it by niching down to kind of the historical aspect, where again, like anybody can build a building or anybody can do a renovation of a building. If you don't have the experience in doing those, you're going to stub your toe the whole way. And so I think what you've done between kind of when you started off, wanting to do everything, right, and have all these different divisions, and really niching down into something, that's definitely a differentiator. Yeah,
and it took us a little bit to kind of look up and realize that, like I said, we've built expertise in that space, right? And the differentiators there are a lot of times in those projects, if you don't have your general contractor on very, very early, outside of just the initial renderings and having an idea, like the expertise that we built in that space is initially being able to go in and do a really extensive existing conditions assessment. We're going in and evaluating the MEP systems. What power requirements are you going to need on the back end versus what power requirements you have? And if you're updating that electrical service, working with Austin Energy here locally can be a big lift, right? It can be expensive. It can be, it's a huge time consuming, very time consuming, right? Do you need a vault? Do you now need an Austin Energy vault, right? Do you now need a transformer? Those transformers are 50-week lead times, right? So, we're evaluating the structural. We just had a project recently across the street from the Paramount. We went into the second story. It was an old historical building. None of the structural was seated correctly, right? So it was a wood deck. We had to remove that second deck and do a pan deck system. So those are things very, very early on, where in a lot of these reuse projects, in order for them to pencil out and for them to make sense, which they do and they will, if you get your general contractor in early and you really have the full story. But that for us in that space has been a huge differentiator, and we legitimately have built expertise in that space. And it took us a while to kind of look up and be like, we've done this. We can provide this insight to the owner and to the architect.
Yeah. What's y'all's typical delivery method? I mean, you're not doing any sort of I just drew a blank, design build type stuff, or is it?
We do some design build as well, where we have relationships with architects who have experience in that space. So we do design build. most of what we're looking at and most of what we're doing is GMP. And so we're providing a lot of kind of insights early on. We're getting through the drawings. We may even have an early release package where we're looking at, a lot of the MEP equipment, rooftop units and stuff like that. Even the structural, like on that project that I was just using that example on, we went and did the second floor structure before we finalized the GMP and before drawings were finalized. And so there's a lot of trust there that you need from your ownership to be able to work in that capacity and making sure that we're being good stewards of their dollar. But, from a design build aspect, and if we want to kind of continue to pursue those things further, I think that we do have to develop a really strong relationship with our architects that do that, to go and pursue some of those things as a design build. Having the knowledge of that process, we're able to mitigate a lot of that risk, like I said, for our owners. But we'd love to, find ourselves in the future doing a lot of that stuff ourselves as well, and partnering with people to be able to go and do a lot of that stuff ourselves. And I think if we don't have that relationship either with the architect or, we're able to do some of that design and architecture ourselves, like, we miss a little bit of the maybe ROI on the back end there.
Mm-hmm. I was just curious because when you're doing GMP type work, there's a lot of coordination and really thinking ahead of getting a contractor on early and coordinating them with the design team that maybe some, private sector owners don't necessarily have that sophistication, right? They're thinking real estate and okay, I buy the property, I, add this much to it, and then here's my ROI, and some of that coordination and management they don't necessarily have, where design build sort of takes that. You're taking the risk from, but you're taking a lot of that coordination on yourself.
Yeah, it can for sure. And, that design build method works really well when an owner's upfront about what their pro forma looks like, right? We're able to kind of help them look and manage the budget and look at, the feasibility of being able to do something that they want to do.
And I can imagine that line of work, you've got some pretty unique stories with different challenges and different things that have come up too. Anything that top of your head you want to share? Just kind of some interesting things you've run into over the years.
That's a very good question. There's so much.
I know it's a big question.
There's two that I can think of right off the bat. One of them right downtown on Congress. Both of them are on Congress. One of them was they wanted a heavy occupancy first floor and office second and third floor. So the occupancy level on the first floor, the building was not sprinklered. And so it required us to provide a 2-hour rated envelope on the interior of the building. And so what we were able to do and work with the city was use 2 1-hour rated systems. And what that was drywall. That was a metal stud, 2 layers of drywall, a hatch channel, and 2 more layers of drywall. This was at a 17-foot deck where we needed to have all of our penetrations for all the pendant lights, for all the mechanical, everything that was coming through that needed to be set before. And then as we're flying drywall, we're caulking at each one of those as well. There was about a 3 or 4 month time period where we're flying drywall overhead, right? That was a pretty wild project in a historical building that wasn't sprinklered, but it needed to meet that fire code. And so I remember the owner coming to me and, saying, how can we do this faster? Can we get them to work to do 10-hour days? Can we work on Saturdays? And we said, this is very dangerous work. We're going to be flying dry. We're going to have tired guys flying drywall 17 feet in the air for 3 months. How much do we want to push them? Right. Mm-hmm. Let's look on the back end of this and how much you want to push them. So that project was a real challenge. Another one that we had that sticks out in my mind is we had a historical building downtown across the street from the Paramount where we needed to excavate. And if anybody knows anything about Austin, it's rock. And so it was a historical building, so we couldn't remove any of the exterior in order to get any excavating equipment in there. We had to locate something called a Brock, which was able to fit in the door, and it was remote controlled. And so we needed to do all of our underground excavation, all the plumbing, grease trap. We even took back. So the second floor is out the back, is higher than the first floor. We actually excavated back all the way on the first floor. And so working in very tight quarters, doing a lot of excavation in rock in a historical building that we couldn't get excavation equipment in. And it was actually a remote controlled piece of equipment. So somebody's over there with an Xbox controller for weeks, excavating. That was a pretty interesting one.
That's fascinating. That reminds me, I did a project last year in a grain mill where we had to do something similar, excavate, but it was in the very center. There was no easy way to get stuff in there, plus getting things out. The equipment was all running around the area we were excavating, so that's a challenge because that's all food grade things. So I can appreciate some of the intricacies of that.
Yeah. Gosh, I could think of a ton of them in the type of work, but it's fun. It's add some challenge and add some problem solving in there.
Do you have any good skeleton in the closet stories where, one thing I tell owners is new construction is easy, right? Because you're not going to find anything. But when you do any sort of renovations, you can do as much exploration as you want. You think you know everything about the building, but until you really get into it and start demoing and really almost until you get down to structure, you're still opening closets and finding skeletons.
Yeah, there was one project that we were doing where this was on the second floor, is a 3-story building. On the second floor, we were going in and replacing the finishes in a restroom. It was a really old building, and it was a stick-framed wood building. We opened up the tile. We demoed out the tile, and all we're going to do is replace new tile. Well, they had water seeping through that tile for probably many years. So there was, as you would imagine, the wood was just eroding. And that structure actually was no longer sound. And we needed to make sure to get some framing, get some steel in there to reinforce the structure. But, that's just an example of another good reason to make sure your general contractor's in early to do some exploratory demo too. Right. There's a lot of times in a lot of the older buildings where we're finding clogged and collapsed plumbing lines, so we're smoking and snaking lines before. And so we're going into the projects with all of those things taken into consideration as well. But yeah, that's one that stands out that was just recently over the past couple months.
And then, so Drew, talked a little bit about having different systems, processes, things in your company that, it's been a big component, I would say, to your growth and success. As far as efficiencies going, the organization and, being agile, can you speak a little bit to that about how things are structured for you and what do you find works well and, general philosophy type things for the business side?
Yeah. I think for us, being a young company, we're really able to kind of stick and move. I think that we have the typical kind of project management softwares, those things. I think we first got those things, we were driving it like a Fiat. We said, how do we drive this like a Lamborghini? How do we make sure that we're using all the capabilities of our project management software integrated with our accounting to make sure that we're managing the RFIs, submittals, schedules, OACs, and then the finances of the company in the ways that works best for the owner. So I think those are things that we as a young company that we're adaptable and to be able to use those technologies really, really well. Our superintendents out on site are, they're all equipped with, the typical things that you would think, like an iPad, right? And so they're able to issue RFIs very, very quickly out on site and are very proficient with those types of things.
Well, and it's always fun to ask that question, just because I know when I started my company, it's almost like we added a piece of software at a time. It was like, all right, well, first I need to be able to track our books, and then I need to be able to have some kind of PM software. And okay, now I got to do invoices, and now I got to track expenses, and now I got to get all that shit together somehow. And finding the best way to do it. We've talked about this on a bunch of our podcast episodes. Finding the right software tool that can do not even all of it, but just most of it, and do it well. It's just so challenging.
It's incredibly challenging, especially for a smaller company. Like when we were first looking at project management softwares, we were like, is this a tool that's going to help us, or is it a tool that's going to dictate our processes? Right? We wanted a tool that was going to help us. We didn't, and so making sure that it's integrated and there's mapping back and forth between your project management software and accounting was incredibly important, and really understanding how those things map in order to be able to inform, our project management teams who aren't in the accounting software is incredibly important. Being able to use it as a financial tool. So like managing your budgets and your forecasting and those types of things, like, is it in that software as well? When we first got started, we were not using project management software, because when I initially looked at them, I didn't feel as though they allowed us the flexibility to be able to service our client in the best way. They didn't service us as a small company. Now I think a lot of them have done a better job of trying to grab the mid-market, what I would consider us a mid-market general contractor, not necessarily a small general contractor now. And, when I first was looking at those, I was like, they don't service us well. They're not built for us. They're built for, the larger general contractors. And, to the credit of the project management software that we work with, they were interested in how do they create their project management software to service, other size companies. And I think that they've done a phenomenal job of doing that. We use that system, like, hopefully, like I said, we drive it like a Ferrari now. So
can I ask, unless it's a trade secret, what PM software are you using?
It's Procore.
Okay.
Yeah, we use Procore, and they have a huge presence here in Austin.
Yep.
And as a very young company, when they were courting us, and having a lot of conversations with them about, their software, I was really upfront about sharing, my concerns with them, and they stayed after it, and they stayed after the conversation with us, and they brought back a ton of solutions to us, and to their credit, like, I think that they've continued to mature their software, ever growing and ever improving to really help companies like us.
Are you using any AI tools?
Yes and no. I think that we've started to kind of build some AI tools for our marketing and advertising. AJ on our team and Aaron, have kind of started to build our brand and our persona within AI softwares to really kind of help us and guide us and make sure that we're staying on brand. And so we've kind of built a persona within an AI software to help us with some of those things. Just like everybody else, like we've looked at, like, how are we using that better as a tool. And so for us right now, I think people use it individually for certain tasks. I would love to build something, like something for our employees that's kind of like an HR / help tool, like, hey, what's the best way for me to put together this change order and present it to the client? Here are some of the things that I'm challenging. Here are some of the things that I'm challenged with, help me think through that process and put together that process. I think those are kind of aspirations that we have to be able to use it as a tool, but Probably not to the extent in which, or probably to the extent in which people are kind of tinkering with those things now. But no, we haven't really, built out any robust systems like different ideas that we have just yet.
For a while, I've been wanting to. I'll probably never do it, but I would have to have somebody who's a lot smarter than me on the technology side. But to build out a project management software, like say take Procore and add Clippy. You remember Clippy from Microsoft Word? Like looks like you're writing a letter. Like he pops up and says, "Looks like you're writing a change order," and it kind of helps you out because it's probably. I mean, you probably see it. There's a whole lot of people that are coming in the industry that may not necessarily have the experience, and as an industry, we do a very poor job of mentoring and training. And so if we can provide them with better resources, and even people, I've been doing this 14 years, I guess, and like every day I still find something that like I haven't done before, or a different way or something like that. Like, and so just be able to kind of hold your hand through the thing. It's built into your PM software, so it's kind of there with you as you go about your work.
Yeah, I think that's a great idea. We have. For new hires, we have this learning management system and software where people are able to go in and do the trainings, and we're walking through, all the different ways in how you do things, whether it's, developing a change order, developing a pay app, how do I do submittals? So how do we take that information and training and, training videos and things like that we've put together and kind of sort of create a chatbot for the employees of like, hey, how am I, what's the best way for me to deliver, like I said, this change order, or I have this RFI, here's the things I'm challenging with, like, what's the best way to be able to present this, and what information do I need to include in that? Like, that would be a pretty incredible piece. I don't know how to do that, right? So these are all just ideas, but I think everybody's tinkering with those ideas. I think the opportunities there are real, likely maybe a company comes out of there, right? Where a company like a Procore or something like that develops, an AI software to be able to that you can purchase from them as a subscription base to be able to use it for your company, right? Like maybe that's a little bit more feasible than building it yourself. Feels like a tall order, but
very tall.
We'll see.
Well, and it's a subject that's very timely right now for what we have going on. As I talked about earlier, we're looking to hire somebody. So, putting together that training program for this person that's, customized around, what their needs are, as well as getting to know the company and, what's the best, most efficient way to do it and still get the right one-on-one time with people and, build the relationship. That's the challenging part, I think, is finding that balance between the two.
Yep. Yeah, absolutely.
Our handlers are telling us it's time to move on to the word association game. And so we hadn't talked about this, I guess. So what we do is basically throw a word out to you. And basically the first thing that comes to your mind, you just blurt it out.
All right.
Yeah. And we like to remind everybody, this is the only part of the show we can't edit either. So no pressure.
And explicit curse words.
They're encouraged.
They're not
encouraged.
No, I'm sorry. I'm not encouraged.
They're not discouraged. Let's just say that. First word, change order.
Painful.
That's true. Next word is.
We don't like those either.
Next word is estimate.
Accuracy.
I like it. I'm going to change the next one. I'm going to change it to subcontractor.
Relationship.
I like it. OSHA. This is the one where everybody bites their tongue.
I would say necessary. Yeah, necessary.
BIM.
I'm sorry?
BIM.
What are you really using it for? I know it's not a word, but
That's a great
what are you
question.
using it for? What's your intentions?
Are you guys using it?
I would say when an owner is requiring it, we've had a lot more success with things like 3D modeling with structural. So where we're going into a building, we're adding structural and have different kind of components in that, where it's a tight space, where we're doing 3D modeling of the space, and that's being presented to us by the structural company. We're providing that information back to the architect, making sure that columns are in the right locations in their design, as well as, there's a project where we just did an atrium at the roof, like the coordination between steel, the atrium, and the architect. If we didn't use that 3D modeling system, like that would have been I don't even know if it would have been feasible in the end product that we delivered.
Well, and that's really interesting. I'll just say really quick before we wrap up. Very similar to what we're finding too in the manufacturing space. We use 3D models a lot in Navisworks and stuff like that. And it's always this gray area between how closely do you follow it, how much is it a guide versus how much is it going to dictate the installation.
Yeah,
because it's never quite as clear as anybody wants to make it sound. Sometimes like things like structural, big things. Sure, you're following it to a T as much as you can, but some other things, maybe some piping or some electrical, could be subject to best installation method.
Yeah, in that the high tech manufacturing, which I early started in my career, like that stuff was absolutely necessary. We were doing anodized etch lines, we were doing tool hookups, CNC machines, right, where we were providing like DI water, different compressed air, like. There was a ton of different systems that were going through that space, wastewater, and it was absolutely necessary for us to use BIM, and for the people out on site to be really like understanding those systems. But, when we see it and, hey, we're doing a 20,000 square foot, two-story like corporate office or hospitality space, like what's the intent? What are we using it for? Because Kyle, to your point exactly, a lot of times when you get on site, there's best methods, right? And we don't want it to, necessarily dictate against best methods in the field as well.
That's right.
I'll let you wrap it up, Kyle. We're at our time here.
Very good. Well, yeah, Drew, we're kind of wrapping up. Any last words of advice? Any words of wisdom for next generation listening in? Oh,
goodness. Next generation.
Yeah.
Yeah, I would say, if you're getting into project management, be willing to get in, and this may be cliche. It's cliche because it works, is, don't be afraid to ask a lot of questions, right? I remember when I was first in my career, some of the people that helped me the most were 30, 40-year veterans that are willing to sit down with you when you say, I don't know the answer to this. I remember going to sit down with an old, he was in his 60s electrician who was managing almost 300 electricians on a project that we were on, and sitting down with him and just asking him a ton of questions, and the willingness from people who have been in the industry to help you. It provides them a sense of being as well, where they really are willing to help you and willing to sit down and ask those questions. So that's one thing that I would say, if you're young, enjoying the industry, get out on site, ask superintendents their methodology. You learn a ton from superintendents out on site and building. You can learn a ton from your subcontractors and those relationships. So yeah, be willing to get out there, put yourself out there, ask questions, ask dumb questions. So yeah.
Love it.
Well, and with the trade shortage and retirement coming up too, soak up that knowledge before it's gone.
Yeah.
That's some great advice there, Drew.
Yep.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
All right. Well, Matt, anything else before we wrap it up?
No, man, I think this was a great episode. I appreciate it, Drew. Thanks for taking some time and joining us.
Yeah. Thank you guys. I appreciate it.
Thanks a lot, Drew. It was great having you. And everybody listening in, don't forget, get a hold of us for any upcoming projects, jobs, opportunities, connections, and like, follow, share. And again, Drew, thanks so much, man.
Thank you guys. I really appreciate it.